Welcome to episode 112 of Anchored in Education. I'm E. Scott England, and Anchored in Education is the podcast dedicated to all things education. Educators across the world routinely engage in conversations surrounding fundamentals, concepts, and new ideas that improve this great profession. Sometimes we agree, other times we disagree. But at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education. I sometimes wonder if the 1991 hit song by Genesis, I Can't Dance, was written for me. I mean, I was only 8, so maybe it would be cruel to say they would direct such harsh words to a young and impressionable child. Or maybe it was written with the likes of me in mind. But it is nearly accurate in all ways. I can neither dance nor sing. And judging by a recent stroll through downtown Chicago on my way from the Orange Line to Union Station, proved I struggle with walking, as a lack of awareness led me to step off the curb and fall straightway onto Adams Street. I can talk most of the time, so at least there's that. But the lack of the singing or dancing talent has never stopped me from creating parodies to popular songs to get students excited to come back to school. I created them as a first grade teacher, as a principal, and as a superintendent. I even created one during a summer in which I was uncertain where I would be to start in the fall. I just knew that you couldn't go wrong with a good back-to-school jam. That's the power of telling a story with a video, which is pretty perfect since today's guest specializes in video storytelling. John Azoni is the founder of Unveiled, which has the explicit intent of helping higher education institutions better tell their stories through video. And from personal experience, regardless of your position or level within education, you're going to want to learn more with us today. John, welcome to Anchored in Education.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Very excited to have you. And so here's the thing. I always begin each episode asking guests how they became anchored in education. Now, while you don't have a background, so to speak, in education, you work closely with various departments in higher education. So can you give us a little insight into your professional background before we get started today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I own a video production company that works specifically with higher ed. I'll back up a little bit and tell you I got there. I went to art school for college. I studied abstract painting, got into video work through making videos of myself painting, on YouTube, and was having fun with that. Liked making videos. When I graduated there, I stumbled into a job at United Way.
Okay.
I was a homeless outreach worker for a few years. Oddly enough, through some ministry efforts that I was involved in at the time, and then realized I just wasn't a great social worker. So I much more enjoyed helping educate people on homelessness and telling the stories of the people we were serving.
Sure.
So eventually my boss said, "You're pretty good at making videos. You should go do that." Also known as being fired.
Hey, that's all right.
Yeah, so I went from there, worked for a production company for over a decade, was the creative director there for most of the time. And we worked with all kinds of companies, and it kind of a full service production company, but we did a fair amount of work with the Ross School of Business at University of Michigan, and some other small colleges in the area. So I became familiar with higher ed and, the types of videos that they want to create. And so when I left that company 2 years ago, started my company and decided that was a niche that I wanted to, carve out for myself. So last couple of years, just been immersing myself in the higher ed space, and so far so good.
Yeah. And, when I took a look and we had our initial conversation, you have quite a few higher education partners right now. And so that's why we decided to come together today on Anchored in Education to talk about higher education video storytelling. And so your company Unveiled 2 years ago. Wait, hold on. Let me back up because it sounds confusing to the listeners. Your company is called Unveiled, and you started it 2 years ago. Well, I guess you also unveiled it 2 years ago.
Right.
You did so with the explicit intent to help higher education institutions tell better stories. So can you talk a little bit more about this, as well as the importance of connecting with an audience, but on that emotional level?
Yeah. So I think every business or organization should have some sort of soapbox that they stand on. And for me, that's, my soapbox is just the importance of reaching prospective students on an emotional level. So in my work with all kinds of companies at my previous, production company, all different industries, the recurring pattern was a strong tendency toward using video as a way to do an information dump. Mm-hmm. And say everything that we want to say about our product or service. And there was very little emotional connection there. And like, just because you put a bunch of, information over a song that might be dramatic or something doesn't necessarily mean you've checked the emotional box. At the same time, I ventured into higher ed space, realized the needs of a lot of marketing teams were the same. They want to do more videos, but they lack the resources. They want to do more storytelling and be putting out more content, but each video that you make takes so much legwork. So many cats you got to herd at the end. At the end of the day, you get one video out of that. So there's so much friction there. And realizing the power that stories have, specifically student and outcome stories to reach, people on an emotional level. I really wanted to find a way to remove that friction in video storytelling. So that's kind of what I do with my business. But I think that when you give a lot of information about your school, it's good in certain contexts. If a student is really ready to make a decision and maybe is considering a few different schools, that sort of tactical information is important. But when it comes to really, putting your school on the map in a student's mind, there's no better way than putting in front of them stories of people like them that have done what they want to do and have become successful at it. And they can see themselves in that story and they can know that they can be successful at your school too. So I think that's where that emotional component comes in.
Yeah. And, real quick, I want to touch on just one thing that if listeners out there have never put together a video, what you had said, like it's a lot of legwork. If you're going to put together a 30-second video, I mean, you may have countless minutes, even hours of footage that you have to comb through. And so, it's very detailed work. Now, do you think that, I'm kind of going back, and I know it was around like 2004 is when I think Facebook became a thing. It took over from MySpace and all that. And it began with, we were sharing messages with words. And then all of a sudden it became, we were sharing messages with pictures. And then, here comes Instagram and everything else. And I saw something the other day that it may have been referring specifically to Instagram, something along the lines of, pictures are a thing of the past. It's now videos. And so, do you see kind of that progression and what you're doing and why videos appeal to people so much?
I definitely do. I think that that's so much of how we consume content these days. And I think I just heard on another podcast just yesterday that TikTok has overtaken Google as the most visited website.
Really?
In ever, or, or currently, like most visited website on a daily basis. And I'll probably get this statistic wrong, but like people might visit Google once or twice, but people on average visit TikTok 19 times a day.
Oh, wow.
It might have been 18, might have been 16, but a lot.
Sure.
And that's all video. And so, and I know there's a knowledge gap there. When going from, okay, we have a writer or we have some people that know how to write articles and stuff and ask journalistic questions and get good content out that way, but we don't have the resources for video. And I say that's totally fine. Emotions, like people still read books, and be taken on a journey on those. Still read articles. I read every day something, news article, something. So I definitely think there's value to text-based stuff, and that's sometimes even a better decision in certain scenarios. But video, I really think you got to get on board in some fashion.
I completely agree. And when we talk about storytelling, so this is something I've heard countless times, and I still hear it being in higher education. And then I heard it whenever I was principal, superintendent, all that. It's that organizations need to tell their story, because if they don't, someone else will. But I really think it goes beyond just knowing you have to tell your story. You have to know how to tell your story. And so I guess this begs the question to me, what makes a good story worth telling?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, like, when people ask me this question, it may sound silly or obvious, but what makes a good story worth telling is one that is an actual story in the first place. That's step one.
Okay.
Step two is one that is a compelling story. I went to the grocery store and got, peanuts and then I drove home is technically a story. That's just not, when you're looking for students or alumni to tell stories of, the first tendency I find is to, find students who really like the school, like their experience, maybe students who are doing cool things. And the marketing team will say, yay, that's, we're telling our school story. And that's good. And those can make for good stories. But in a lot of cases, what people think is a story just isn't a story. When you have a video or an article of someone that's just, I came to the school, I'm pursuing this degree, and I like my professors and the small class sizes and yada, yada, and I'm not treated like a number, that's a lot of college videos. I feel like, and those in many cases are not stories.
That's just
information.
Yeah. I mean, we would hope that the professors treated you nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I think that organizations across the board, storytelling is a really popular word, but it really does need to be separated, the actual meaning of storytelling, but then also how people use the word. Because I think when people say storytelling, they're talking about all sorts of communication touch points that educate their audience about the value of their school. But then when we talk about actual storytelling, stories, there's a difference. It's like the once upon a time stuff. You're taking us on a journey. So I think really, if it depends on what you mean by telling a good story. If you want to tell a good story, it's got to be a story.
Yeah.
And I think that I encourage schools to look for students or alumni or stories in general that have a depth to their experience, like some sort of vulnerability, because I think vulnerability really is the key ingredient that makes something resonate, with people. Humans can't really relate to everything was perfect all the time in my life. Nothing ever went wrong. 5 stars.
Yeah, right.
A good story is like they wanted something, maybe they didn't get it at first, or they had obstacles in their way because of your school, they found their way and are living out their dream. Maybe they're a first generation college student and there's a good story there about, paving a new path for their family. It's that vulnerability. It's things that people can connect with. And so just saying, getting a student on camera and saying, I love the school, 5 stars. That's information. That's not a story. So I would say what makes a good story is an actual story.
Yeah. Which really goes back to that emotional piece. And I think that, even using, your somewhat humorous example of a story is going to the store and buying peanuts, while it's a story, there's no emotional attachment in that. Right. That it would be if it was a store that reopened that was locally owned and all that, then we start adding those emotional pieces. So I can really kind of see where that comes in. Now, you mentioned just a little bit ago in that something about marketing. And so when we talk about storytelling as a marketing strategy, there are many factors that lead to success. Now, I think something we often overlook, at least in the beginning, is consistency. And I'm hoping you can agree with me here, or will agree. But then at the same time, what can you tell us about why consistency is important and what strategies can be used to become more consistent?
Yes, you have my vote for consistency.
Perfect.
So, yeah, storytelling is just it's not something you do once when you feel like it, and then see some major return. It's a daily effort, whether you're looking for and really marketing is like that, but whether you're looking for stories, getting inspired from other school stories, or actually creating that content, there just isn't a digital platform that I've come across where consistency is optional, and you have to show up on a regular basis people will forget about you so quick that, your brand in their mind leaks like a fire hose. With the algorithm, it gets swept away so fast. And so if you're not consistently showing up, and it might not even be social media, it could be in any other form, you have to stay in front of people. And that doesn't have to be a big effort every time. I think that comes down to choosing what your regular habit is going to be. What are you going to do consistently in small amounts? How often are you going to do that thing? And when will you do it? Every day, every week. I just heard at some point Jerry Seinfeld, he writes a joke every day. And that's his commitment to himself. He's like, I'm gonna write a joke every day, no excuses, and we're not gonna break the chain. I'm gonna mark an X on the calendar every single day. And so I think it's probably in the last year or so I've kind of worked on my consistency like that, just trying to pick out what's the lane going to be for my marketing, my business, and how can I make incremental progress on that. And I think that's the way that we all should be looking at it. So small daily habits a marketer can make, I think, is being a storyteller. In being a storyteller is the act of finding stories, to tell.
Yeah.
Talk to students, talk to alumni, be curious, always be on the lookout for people with unique experiences. Because I think when you know of a story, the content writes itself.
Sure.
You'll get it out in the way that it makes sense to. So yeah, I think that just helps with consistency. And then just, picking something that's going to be your content engine that you're going to do regularly. Do you want to interview professors? You want to record a lecture in your school? Do you want to talk to students? It could be on your iPhone. It doesn't have to be crazy. Yeah. But those are the content engines that can fuel that consistency, because you can break those up into small daily pieces of content. Okay.
Now I want to tie in the last two questions we kind of dove more into, and kind of repackage this into, as I've talked with you, and I think as people work with you, they'll find that you talk about how the right marketing and storytelling can lead to increased enrollment. But to do this, it goes back to finding that right story to tell. And you've touched a little bit on this, but it leads me to wonder, where do you tell organizations to look for a compelling story? And second, what do you believe colleges and universities aren't doing enough in terms of their marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Three ways that I encourage schools. Number one, is typically the one that people gravitate towards the most, and that's reaching out to department heads, professors, et cetera, relying on them to submit possible candidates, because they're the ones on the ground. They know the students, they're working with them every day. And the people in the marketing team usually are not on, in the classroom every day. So that's one, and that yields good results sometimes. But secondly, you could create an avenue for people to self-submit stories. And so this is one thing that I encourage schools to do. And I know that not every school can do this with their or with their politics, but incentivizing students to submit stories. So I feel like if storytelling is part of your marketing strategy, what would it look like to incentivize those self-submission of stories, some sort of budget being put towards paying for stories, if that's even possible with your school, saying, hey, submit a story with these parameters, and if we choose yours to tell, we're going to pay you $500, whatever it is. I think that's one of the things that schools aren't doing enough of. I think they're not investing in finding stories in the first place. They'll invest in everything else, a CRM, consultants, everything else, because that impacts their bottom line. But and then they'll wave the storytelling flag and say, we are telling our story, or we need to be telling our story. And that's one thing that they're expecting, like, free ingredients for,
Right.
So I think if you can get students to self-submit and create a system where that's going to happen regularly, that's the best way to do it. That's pretty much the automated way to do it. And then you're going to get better stories. You're going to get a lot of stories of that you can choose from to find the impactful ones. What you don't want to do is go, okay, we need to make a video for our upcoming capital campaign event. Let's go find stories right now. And what usually happens, they resort to option one, which is let's ask our department heads, our professors. And then usually the stories that trickle through are like the kind of, I liked the school 5 stars kind of stories.
Back to just the information rather than a story.
Yeah. So that's I would say 2, if you can make, suggestion number 2 work with,
sure.
Finding a way to get students to self-submit and incentivizing that's the best way to do it. But number 3 is combining story collection with market research in some way.
Okay.
So I work with a lot of schools that, in a lot of cases, don't really understand their students. And we work on their messaging for a particular video or a series of videos, and we're kind of guessing at what are the right, what's the right positioning, or what's the right, this or that in messaging. And so I just feel like if you talk to students, if you make it a habit to regularly, as the marketing team or something, talk to students, talk to alumni, set up meetings, set up phone calls, ask them good questions about their experience, their life, their stories. Not only are you going to get great data from that, that you can use to inform your overall messaging, but you're going to uncover stories in that are going to be deeper than, because if you just ask people like, hey, submit your story that we can use as a testimonial. Like I said, like a lot of people will be like, I like the school, but they're not going to readily say like, I experienced some trauma in my life as a,
sure,
as a kid. And so I wanted to become a social worker, and that's why I'm here,
Yeah.
So I think just really either getting them to self-submit or really having those conversations and drawing those stories out and then distributing from there.
So let's talk a little bit on the distribution side of things. In what arenas should higher education institutions be on right now? Because, I know it's constantly changing as far as where students are residing and what platform and everything else. But is it still something we should be, spreading across all platforms, or should we be centralizing our focus on whatever the most popular? What recommendations do you typically give?
I think going back to consistency, it's hard to do everything consistently, picking 1 or 2 platforms, I think is a smarter approach than spreading your efforts across all the options, Twitter, LinkedIn, everything. But, thinking about where your students hang out, are you a business school that's really going after, MBA candidates? LinkedIn's probably the best place for you to hang out, because that's where they're looking to grow professionally, make new connections, climb the ladder, that kind of thing. And they're in that mindset when they're on LinkedIn. Facebook, not so much. They're looking to share pictures of their kids and things like that. People go on TikTok to be entertained, and I've heard, I've heard it. Someone told me that TikTok's a great place to engage your current students with like, what's a day in the life, or like what's going on, like, experiencing this or that about the school. And just knowing that like, okay, mostly young people are on TikTok. So if you're a heavily undergraduate focused school, TikTok is something to consider. And I have yet to really come across a school that has dove into TikTok. I've come across a lot that are teetering on the fence, and they don't know, because they assume that they have to do a dance, like do dances and stuff.
Right. Right.
And that's not always the case. TikTok is a content creation platform. It's short, valuable content. Oftentimes a lot of people go on there to be entertaining. So don't be boring, but you don't have to dance to be on TikTok, and just know that most of the young people are hanging out there.
Okay. Yeah. And, what I always say is it can never hurt to dance, though. So I guess. Right. John, before we go, some listening today might be thinking, well, they have content in their hands, but they really aren't sure what to do with it. Or they've been trying to run storytelling campaigns on their own to no success, maybe talking or, going out some of the avenues you've talked about. So is it possible to repurpose the existing content and creating new and exciting messages to help with marketing?
For sure. I think that content marketing, content creation is really about, I think people need to think smaller instead of bigger, which is usually the opposite advice you would.
Right.
I think you need to think in terms of taking a big idea and breaking that into 10, 15 small thoughts, small pieces of wisdom, because when people are scrolling, they're not like, they want a quick win. Mm-hmm. On a lot of platforms. They want to be quickly entertained and move on to the next thing. They want to quickly learn something on LinkedIn and move on to the next thing. They're not going to watch read an article that takes them 20 minutes, to read if they're just scrolling. So I think it's really taking those bigger ideas and breaking them into smaller parts. And that really just saves so much time, so much headache. You're not trying to create 365 giant thoughts of, giant pieces of content. You're creating 365 smaller pieces of content. And maybe even, like you said, repurposing. You probably already have, schools probably already have articles they've written. Maybe they've gone into a classroom and filmed a lecture. Maybe they had a guest speaker come from a company and talk about developing a business or whatever that is, and they have recorded that. Those are perfect to take and break up into small little chunks. And that's what I do. I mean, that's my one thing that I do for content creation is my podcast, because I, make the hour-long episode or whatever with somebody from marketing at a school. But that gets me usually like 8 or 10 smaller snippets that I break up and release on LinkedIn. And that's my content strategy. I just do the podcast and break it up, and there it is. And I don't wake up every morning wondering, what am I going to post? It's really taking the big ideas and figuring out how can you repurpose those into a bunch of smaller nuggets of wisdom.
Okay. I like that. And, depending on which day this little snippet came in, that may be the way that we promote this wonderful episode on how storytelling can help the company of John's is unveiled. And just so people know, it is unveiled without the E in the ED. So as you told me, you have to spell it wrong to get it right. But if listeners are still wondering, they can head over to my website on today's episode page, and a link to your company is going to be on there for today. John, thank you so much for joining us on Anchored in Education.
Yeah, it was a joy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, you can read more about John on today's episode page. Simply head over to my website, escottengland.com, and click on the podcast tab at top. I'll also include a link on where you can find John online, which I recommend visiting his website and signing up for his newsletter. And don't forget to subscribe to Anchored in Education on whatever platform you get your podcast. And if you want to like it, comment on it, and share it with friends while you're at it, hey, you're not going to get a complaint from me. Now, around a year ago, I read a story about how Instagram Reels were slowly taking over photographs in terms of popularity. Makes sense considering content creators could easily share content between social media apps like TikTok and Instagram without the need of making major changes. But the underlying message was there. There is power in videos. Much like cameras, our phones have enabled us to have decent quality video recording device right at our fingertips. We need to connect with our audience, our communities, and do it in various ways. Video storytelling is one of these ways in which it allows everyone to capture maybe a different side of us, or maybe it allows them to catch a peek at something from a different perspective. A major regret of mine from my days in administration is not following through on a video educator series idea that I had. My thought was to use video to better introduce our staff and show a side of them that was more than what we see in the classroom. This is just another way we could have leveraged video storytelling to help connect with our community while showing off the incredible talent we had within our district. If you're wondering where to get started, sometimes you need to look no further than where you are leading. Think back to the book Student Voice by Mike Lubefeld, Nick Poliak, and PJ Capozzi. PJ told a story about a student in his school who showed an incredible interest and talent in video production. PJ first hired the student to do some work for him, but recognizing his talent, he tasked the student with video production for the school. Or maybe you would prefer to team up with John. Either way is a great route as long as you take the steps in promoting the great things your organization is doing. Video storytelling is just one more way we can demonstrate how we are anchored in education.